Leave your homeland and your father's house and go to the land that I will show you. You a voice resounded in the silence of my heart, a voice that though not audible to the ears was clearer and more powerful than the roar of any storm. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you, and by you all the peoples of the earth will be blessed. These were the words of the Lord that resonated in my being, marking the beginning of my story. I am Abraham, born as Abram and of the Chales, a prosperous city in Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers feed the land with life. My father Terah was a respected man, but our lives were ordinary, marked by the seasons and the rituals of a polytheistic society. The divine call was both an awakening and a rupture. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. Genesis 12. How could someone like me, a mere mortal among so many, be the one chosen for such a destiny? The promise was as overwhelming as the night sky under which I stood, and it is here at the age of 75 that my incredible story begins, when I decided to conquer fear and set out on the journey I could not have imagined that I would make it to 178 years old, or that I would have a great offspring. This is where my story begins. With a heart full of hope and a budding faith, I obeyed the Lord and set out with my wife Sarai, Lot my nephew, and all our possessions and the people we had gathered. We headed for the land of Canaan. It was a journey full of hope, guided by divine promise. We traveled northwest through Haran and finally arrived in Canaan, a land of rolling hills and fertile valleys. It was a diverse region, inhabited by Canaanite peoples and fortified city-states, each ruled by its own king. Life in Canaan was different from here. Fields and vineyards stretched as far as the eye could see, and the scent of olive and fig trees filled the air. We discovered that although the land stretching before us was rich and promising, it was occupied by other peoples and cultures. I traveled through the country to the holy place of Shechem, under the oak of Moreh. At that time the Canaanites were the owners of those lands. It was there that the Lord appeared to me again, promising me, to your descendants I will give this land. In honor of him and his promise, I erected an altar in that holy place. Then I moved toward the hill country east of Bethel, and between Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. I set up my camp there too. I erected an altar to the Lord and called upon his name, marking every place of my sojourn with an act of faith and devotion. However, the test of our faith was not long in coming. The promised land, which had welcomed my steps under the blessing of a divine promise, soon became inhospitable under the yoke of severe famine. Why have you brought us to this place? I wondered, looking skyward, searching for answers. The decision to leave for Egypt, the land of the Nile and its full granaries, was made with regret, knowing that it tested the Almighty's promise to care for my family. And I fear not. Abram, the promise echoed, I am your shield, your reward will be very great. Genesis 15. Still aware of Sarai's beauty and fearing for my life, I hatched a plan. I asked her to pose as my sister. Thus I will be well treated for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you. Indeed, upon arriving in Egypt, Sarai's beauty captivated everyone, including the officers of Pharaoh's court, and she was taken to his palace. For her I received deferential treatment, acquiring sheep, cows, donkeys, maid servants, asses, and camels. My stay in Egypt was marked by the dissonance between the opulence of the palaces and the slavery of many of its inhabitants. However, the Lord inflicted great evils on Pharaoh and his people because of Sarai. Pharaoh, realizing the truth, confronted me. What have you done to me? Why did you not warn me that she was your wife? Why did you say that she was Your sister allowing me to take her as wife. There you have your wife, take her and go. After this he ordered his men to escort us out along with Sarai and all our property. When we were expelled from Egypt, we not only returned to Canaan with more than we had brought with us, but also with a deeper understanding of the nature of our God, a protector, a provider, an unfailing guide in times of uncertainty. From Egypt I ascended to the Neb along with my wife and all our possessions, and Lot was coming with us. By God's blessing I had accumulated great wealth in cattle, silver and gold. We continued our journey northward, returning to Bethel, to the place of our first encampment between Bethel and Ai, where I had previously built an altar to the Lord, and where I again called upon his name. Lot, who accompanied me, also owned sheep, cattle and tents. Lot, who accompanied me, also owned sheep, cows and tents. Our possessions had grown so much that there was no longer enough space for us and our flocks, which led to conflicts between my shepherds and Lot's shepherds. At that time the territory was inhabited by the Canaanites and the Perizzites, which further complicated the situation. To avoid disputes and maintain peace, I proposed a solution to Lot. There should be no conflicts between us or our shepherds, since we are family. See, the whole earth is before you. If you choose to go left, I will go right. If you prefer to go to the right, I will go to the left. Lot observed the Jordan Valley, which was a fertile land similar to the Garden of the Lord, or Egypt, before the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Thus he chose for himself the entire lower Jordan region and moved eastward, separating us. Physically I stayed in Canaan, while Lot settled near Sodom, whose inhabitants were known for their wickedness and sin against the Lord. After Lot and I went our separate ways, the Lord spoke to me again, and reaffirming his promise, lift up your eyes and look from where you are to the north, south, east and west, for all the land you see I will give it to you and your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as numerous as the dust of the earth. If anyone could count the dust, he could count your descendants, following the Lord's command. I traveled the land in its length and breadth, mindful of the divine promise that had been given to me. Finally I moved my camp and settled by the oak grove of Mamre in Hebron, where I erected another altar to the Lord, marking a new beginning and a sacred place of worship and communion with him, grateful for his guidance and promises of blessing for me and my descendants. One fine day the Lord appeared to me as I was sitting at the entrance to my tent in the oak grove of Mom, at the time of day when the sun was burning brightest. As I looked up, I noticed 3 men standing near me. Without hesitation I ran to them from the entrance of my tent and bowed to the ground as a sign of respect and hospitality, saying, My Lord, if I have found favor in your eyes, I beg you not to pass by and stop before your servant. Let me bring you some water to wash your feet and rest under this tree. I will bring you a piece of bread, so that you may regain your strength before you go on your way. You have passed by your servant for some reason. They agreed, saying, Do as you have said. Immediately I went to the tent where Sarah was and asked her urgently, Quickly take 3 measures of the best flour needed and prepare some cakes. Then I ran to the corral, selected a tender, well-fed calf and handed it to a servant to prepare it. Without delay I served curds, milk and the prepared calf to our guests, standing with them under the tree while they ate. It was then that they asked me about Sarah my wife, and I answered that she was in the tent. One of them, whose words carried a weight of divine promise, said, I will certainly see you again next year, and by that time Sarah will have had a son. Sarah, listening from the entrance of the tent, laughed inwardly, incredulous at the thought of experiencing the pleasure of motherhood and fatherhood in our advanced age. The Lord, aware of Sarah's laughter, questioned me, Why does Sarah laugh, thinking that she cannot have a child in her old age? Is anything impossible for the Lord? When I see you again at the same time next year. Say Sarah will have borne a son. Sarah fearfully denied that she had laughed, but the Lord said, yes, you have laughed. After the men's departure for Sodom, I reflected on the divine purpose and prepared to bid them farewell. The Lord shared with me his plans, pondering whether I should conceal from myself what was about to be done in Sodom and Gomorrah, since I would be the founder of a great and blessed nation chosen to teach justice and righteousness to my descendants. Faced with the imminent destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, I approached the Lord, pleading for the city. Will you destroy the righteous along with the guilty? If there are 50 righteous in the city, will you destroy it? Anyway, the Lord promised that he would spare the city for the sake of the 50 righteous. My concern for righteousness led me to intercede further, reducing the number of righteous needed to spare the city from destruction to 10. The Lord in his mercy agreed not to destroy it if he could find those 10 righteous. When the 2 angels arrived in Sodom that evening, my nephew Lot was sitting at the entrance to the city. When he saw them, he rose to meet them, showing respect and bowing to the ground. He begged them, please come to your servant's house for the night. You may wash your feet and in the morning be on your way. Although initially reluctant, agreeing to spend the night in the square, Lot was so insistent that they finally accepted his hospitality and made their way to his house. There Lot prepared a meal for them, baked unleavened cookies, and they ate together. Not much time had passed when the men of Sodom, from the young men to the old men, surrounded the house, demanding that Lot hand over to them the men who had come to abuse them. Lot, going out to confront them and closing the door behind him, begged them not to commit such vainness. He even offered his 2 virgin daughters rather than allow them to harm his guests, a desperado decision showing his commitment to protect those who had come to his home. The mob, however, rejected him and threatened to treat him worse than the others, just as they attempted to break in. The angels intervened, saving Lot and blinding the attackers so that they could not find the door. Then the angels revealed to Lot the purpose of their visit, the imminent destruction of Sodom. Because of its great wickedness, they urged Lot to gather his family and leave the city. Lot tried to warn his sons-in-law, but they did not take him seriously. At dawn, at Lot's hesitation, the angel took him by the hand along with his wife and daughters and led him out of the city by the Lord's mercy. Once safe, the angels warned Lot to flee to the mountains without looking back. Lot was afraid to go that far and ask for refuge in a small town nearby. Zor, the angel, agreed, allowing Lot and his family to take refuge there. When the sun rose and Lot reached Zor, the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah with brimstone and fire from heaven. Lot's wife, disobeying the command not to look back, became a pillar of salt. The next morning I returned to the place where I had stood before the Lord, watching in horror as the smoke of destruction rose from the ground. Although divine judgment had fallen on Sodom and Gomorrah, the Lord remembered his promise to me and saved Lot, a testimony to divine justice and mercy. Even in the midst of judgment, the devastation of those cities was a grim reminder of the consequences of sin and the importance of obedience to God. From there I moved to the Neb area, settling between Kadesh and Sur, and finally made my way to Gar, where I decided to stay for a while, as I had done on previous occasions, for fear that my life would be in danger because of Sarah's beauty. I said that she was my sister. Ankh, the king of Gur, hearing this, sent for Sarah to be brought to his palace. That night, however, God intervened in an impressive way. He appeared in a dream to Alek and warned him that he was about to make a grave mistake by taking Sarah, for she was my wife. Ankh, surprised and frightened by the dream, defended his innocence before God, claiming that he had acted in good faith based on the information that both Sarah and I had given him. God in his mercy replied that he was aware of his innocence, and that was precisely why he had intervened to prevent him from sinning against him. He ordered him to return Sarah and added that I, being a prophet, would intercede for him so that he would not die at dawn. Inc. summoned his servants and told them what had happened, which caused great fear among them. Then he called me and confronted me with great anguish, asking me why I had acted in such a way, exposing him and his kingdom to commit such a grave sin. In my defense, I explained that I believed that there was no fear of God in Gur, and that I feared for my life because of my wife. I also revealed that although I had said that Sarah was my sister, I was not entirely lying, for she was really my half-sister and my wife. I told her that since God had made me leave my home, I had agreed with Sarah to say that she was my sister to protect us, Aimk, in a gesture of goodwill, and to repair the misunderstanding. Returned Sarah to me and compensated us with sheep, cows, slaves, and handmaids. In addition, he offered his land for us to settle wherever we thought best, and to Sarah he gave her 1,000 silver coins as a way of clearing her honor. After this incident, I interceded with God for Aimk, his family, and his female servants, so that they could have children again, since God had closed the wombs of all the women in Amc's house. Because of Sarah, God heard my prayer and healed everyone in Amc's house, demonstrating once again his mercy and power. The Lord visited Sarah and me in a miraculous way, fulfilling his promise in a way that exceeded all our celebration. One day Sarah observed Ishmael, the son Hagar the Egyptian had given me, mocking Isaac. This prompted Sarah to ask me to send Hagar and her son away, for she did not want Ishmael to share the inheritance with Isaac. This request grieved me deeply, for Ishmael was also my son, but God intervened, saying to me, do not grieve for the child or for your slave girl. Do as Sarah tells you, for it is through Isaac that your descendants will be recognized, but also of the son of the bondwoman I will make a nation, for he is your offspring. With a heavy heart but trusting in God's promise, I prepared Hagar and Ishmael for their departure, giving them provisions for the journey and seeing them off at dawn. God did not abandon Ishmael when Hagar and the boy were in a desperate situation in the desert. God intervened, assuring them of a future and divine protection. Ishmael grew up in the desert, becoming an experienced archer, and his mother married him to an Egyptian woman at that time. Aimk and Pikol, the chief of his army, recognized God's blessing on my life and sought to secure a mutually loyal relationship with me. I vowed to treat them with the same loyalty they had shown me. However, tensions arose over a well that Aimk servants had usurped. Despite this conflict, we managed to come to an agreement, and we entered into an alliance sealed with the exchange of gifts and the oath at Beer Shaba, which means well of the oath. At Beer Shaba I planted a tamarisk tree and called on the name of the Lord, the Eternal, establishing my residence in the land of the Philistines. For a long time life there was a constant testimony of God's faithfulness to me and my family, marked by promise, conflict, and reconciliation. After those significant events in my life, one day God decided to test me. Abraham, he called to me. Here I am, I responded, always ready to listen to his voice. It was then that he gave me an instruction that would make any father's heart tremble. Take your only son Isaac, whom you love so much, go to the region of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering on the mount that I will show you. I cannot begin to describe the storm of emotions that came over me at that moment. However, with unwavering faith in God, I rose early the next day, prepared my donkey, and together with 2 of my servants and my beloved son Isaac, we set Out I cut the wood for the sacrifice and we set out for the place God had appointed on the third day of our journey from afar. I could see the destination we were to reach. I told my servants to wait with the donkey while Isaac and I continued on. We will worship and then return. I assured them, though my heart was heavy with what I knew I must do. I loaded the wood for the burnt offering on his seek, while I carried the fire and the knife. We walked together, father and son, in a silence filled with foreboding. Finally, Isaac broke the silence, asking me where the lamb for the sacrifice was. God will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son, I replied with a faith I hardly understood. How I maintained. Arriving at the place appointed by God, I built an altar, placed the wood, and with a broken heart bound Isaac and laid him on the altar. As I stretched out my hand to take the knife and do as I was commanded, a voice from heaven stopped me. Abraham, Abraham. It was the angel of the Lord calling to me. Here I am, I replied, and the angel instructed me not to harm the boy, proving that my fear of God was genuine. Having not denied him my only son, I then looked and saw a ram caught by the horns in a bush. I took it and offered it as a burnt offering in place of my son. That place I called the Lord will provide, a statement that became a testimony to God's provision and faithfulness. The angel of the Lord blessed me a second time from heaven, promising me countless descendants and blessings for obeying his voice. I returned to where my servants were, and together we returned to Beersheba, where I continued to live, reflecting on the profound lesson of faith and obedience that God had taught me on the mountain of Moriah. Sarah, my beloved wife, lived 127 years. Her death in Kirath Arba, known today as Hebron in the land of Canaan, left me in deep sorrow. I mourned her and mourned, feeling the void that her departure left in my life. After I left the place of her passing, I went to the descendants of hate. I stood in their midst as a stranger without a plot of land to call my own. I said to them, although I am only a resident alien among you, I beg you to grant me a burial plot to bury my wife. The response of hate's descendants was a testimony to the esteem in which they held me. Sir, you are a prince of God among us. Choose the best of our graves to bury your wife. None of us will deny you her sire. For this purpose, grateful for their offer, I stood up and showed them my respect. Then I asked for their intercession with Ephron, son of Sojer, too. By the cave of Machpelah, located at the end of his field, I wanted to acquire it at the right price in order to establish